I still remember that night. The air was heavy with the smell of rain on asphalt, and the streetlights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the empty road. My heart was pounding, and I could feel it in my throat, like it was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready for. I had parked my car a few blocks away from my house, careful to stay hidden behind a row of hedges, hoping to surprise my son. He had been talking for days about how much he wanted a late-night drive, and I wanted to make it special for him. I thought it would be simpler, quick little surprise, a laugh, maybe a smile that lit up his face. I didn't expect my plan to spiral into something I couldn't have imagined. I crouched low in the back seat, my hands gripping the edge of the seat, trying not to make a sound. Every little noise, the creak of the leather, the soft shuffle of my shoes against the floor, seemed deafening in the quiet of the night. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow, like the night itself was holding its breath with me. I told myself it was just excitement. But a small knot of fear had begun to grow in my stomach as I peered through this slightly tinted window. I saw my son walking toward the car, his backpack slung over one shoulder, humming a little tune I didn't recognize. My chest warmed at the sight of him, but then something made me pause. My eyes caught movement in the passenger seat. My heartbeat skipped. There was someone already sitting there. At first I thought it was a friend, maybe someone giving him a lift. But the streetlight revealed a face I didn't expect, someone I wasn't ready to see. I froze, my hands tightening around the edge of the seat. The figure didn't move, just sat there quietly, looking straight ahead. My mind raced. Could it be a mistake? Maybe someone borrowed the car. But no, that face. It was familiar. Too familiar. I had seen it before in the oddest, most uncomfortable places. My stomach churned and a cold shiver ran down my spine. The night air suddenly felt thick, almost suffocating. I wanted to call out my son's name, warn him, but my throat was dry and my lips felt glued together. I could only watch as he approached, unaware of the tension in the car, unaware of the shadow I had just discovered. The closer he got, the more my chest tightened, and every instinct in me screamed that something was wrong. That tonight was not going to be like I had imagined. When he opened the car door and slid into the driver's seat, I could hear the soft click of the seatbelt. He looked around smiling, oblivious to the tension I felt. Then the person beside him turned slightly, and our eyes met. My breath caught in my throat. There was no mistaking it. I knew that face, and the realization hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. My carefully planned surprise was about to become the most shocking night of my life. I wanted to move, to stand up and confront whoever it was, but I couldn't. My body felt frozen, heavy, trapped in a sudden, paralyzing fear. I could hear my son humming again, unaware, blissfully happy, and that made it even harder to act. How could I ruin this moment? How could I even explain what I was seeing without causing him panic? A low whisper of the wind slid past the car, and with it came the faintest creak of the old leather seats. It was almost like the night itself was warning me, whispering that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. My mind spun, trying to figure out who could be sitting there and why. My son's laughter, soft and innocent, cut through the tension like a fragile thread holding everything together, and I clung to it, even as fear coiled tightly in my chest. Then, without warning, the person beside him leaned slightly forward and my stomach dropped. I couldn't see their expression clearly, but there was a weight in the way they moved, a purpose that sent chills down my spine. And just like that, the night shifted. The plan I had so carefully made, the simple, happy surprise, I realized it had completely slipped from my control. I held my breath, praying my son wouldn't notice anything strange, praying that I could somehow navigate this, and still a small, nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered a terrifying possibility. Who was this? And why were they in the car with him? I knew one thing for certain. Tonight would not be remembered as a simple surprise. It would be remembered as the night everything changed. And as I stayed hidden in the back seat, frozen in shock, I knew that the answers I needed would not come easily. Someone else had arrived in my story, and the moment I had been waiting for, a quiet, joyful moment with my son, was about to become something I would never forget. And just as I started to make a plan to confront them, a sudden sound from the street tires screeching, a door slamming made me jump. My heart raced faster, my palms grew sweaty, and in that instant I realized that this night was far from over. Something was coming, something I could not yet see, and I had no idea how it would end. I still remember that night. Even now, thinking back, my hands start trembling just a little. I was hiding in the back seat, trying to keep quiet, but my mind was racing faster than my heartbeat. I could hear every small sound, the faint hum of the car engine, the soft shuffle of my son adjusting in his seat, and the barely audible breathing of the person next to him. Each sound seemed magnified, echoing in the dark space around me. I couldn't move. My body felt heavy, like it was weighed down by fear and disbelief. Who was this? Why were they here? And most importantly, did my son know them? My chest felt tight and I could barely breathe. But I forced myself to stay calm, to watch, to figure out what I was seeing before I acted. The street was quiet outside, but the car felt like a different world. Shadows danced across the dashboard from the streetlights, and the faint reflection of the figure beside my son in the window made my skin crawl. They weren't just sitting there casually, they had a purpose, an air of confidence that unsettled me. Every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. I wanted to call out, to warn my son, but my voice refused to work. My throat was tight, dry, as if the fear itself had locked it shut. I had to think, had to be careful. If I made a wrong move, the moment I had planned as a simple surprise could turn into something dangerous. My mind went through every possibility, every explanation. But none of them made sense. My son laughed softly, still oblivious to the tension that was building inside the car. The sound was almost cruel in its innocence because it made the fear inside me grow even stronger. I couldn't understand how he could be so relaxed when I knew, just knew, that something was wrong. I wanted to reach out, to touch his shoulder, to tell him to be careful. But the weight of the unknown kept me frozen. The person beside him shifted slightly, and my eyes narrowed. Something about the movement was deliberate, almost familiar, but I couldn't place it. My heart sank further. I tried to make sense of the features, the voice, the way they sat so naturally next to him, but my mind refused to cooperate. Panic was bubbling beneath the surface, and I had to force it down. I had to focus. Then, suddenly, the figure spoke. Not loudly, just a whisper, but it was enough to make me jump. The words weren't meant for me, but I caught them anyway. "It's time," they said. My stomach dropped. Time for what? What could possibly be happening that I didn't know about? My son didn't respond. He just smiled and adjusted his backpack. The figure laughed softly, a sound that made my skin crawl. I couldn't see their face clearly, but the tone was chilling, calm, but dangerous. Like they were in control of something I wasn't even aware existed. I tried to calm myself, telling myself I needed to think logically, to stay hidden, but it was almost impossible. My mind jumped from one terrifying possibility to another. Could this person be dangerous? Could they have bad intentions toward my son? Or was this something else, something I couldn't understand yet? The uncertainty made my stomach twist, and the adrenaline shot through me like electricity. I thought about how I had planned this night as simple surprise. It's a fun moment with my son. I imagined the smile on his face, the laughter we would share. And now, all of that was slipping away, replaced by fear I couldn't ignore. Every instinct in me screamed that I needed to act, but I didn't know how. I was trapped in the back seat, paralyzed by the unknown, forced to watch as the person beside him moved with quiet purpose. Then, my son reached over to adjust something on the dashboard, and for a brief moment, I saw the figure clearly in the reflection of the window. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This person, someone I had thought I knew, someone from my past, was sitting there with my son, and the recognition hit me like a punch in the gut. Why were they here? What did they want? The car seemed to shrink around me. The shadows felt heavier, the air thicker, and my heart beat louder than ever. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to do something. Anything, but I couldn't. I just stayed hidden, watching, waiting, hoping my son wouldn't notice the danger I felt lurking beside him. And then, just as I was gathering courage to finally speak, a sudden knock came at the driver's side window. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. My son turned, startled, and the figure beside him smiled a slow, knowing smile that made my skin crawl. The knock came again, louder this time, and I realized with horror that it wasn't someone outside the car. It was the sound of the figure inside leaning over, tapping the glass in a way that made it seem almost intentional, almost like a warning. Fear tightened its grip on me. My body shook, my hands went cold, and I realized I had no idea what would happen next. The night I had imagined as a simple, happy surprise had turned into something terrifying, something I could not control. I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever happened next would change everything. And in that moment, I understood the truth. I was not just a hidden observer anymore. I was part of a story I didn't want to be in, a story that had its own rules, and was about to unfold right in front of me. The figure leaned back slightly, still smiling, and my mind raced. Should I confront them? Should I warn my son? Or should I stay silent, hoping that somehow this would all end without disaster? My thoughts were interrupted by the soft, almost imperceptible sound of movement outside the car. Another car, or someone following us. I couldn't tell. And just as I was about to make a decision, my son spoke a single word that made my heart stop. Dad, the way he said it? Uncertain, questioning. It sent a chill down my spine. They knew I was there. Or maybe they didn't. But the night, already heavy with tension, suddenly felt like it was closing in on me from all sides. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I still remember that night. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The single word from my son, Dad, hung in the air like a warning bell. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Could he hear me hiding? Did he suspect something? Or worse, did the person beside him know? The figure shifted slightly in the seat, and I could finally see more clearly in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The face was familiar, but not in a way I could immediately place. There was something in their eyes, a quiet, controlled confidence that made my stomach twist. My mind raced through memories trying to figure out where I had seen them before. And then it hit me like a THUNDERCLAP. I had seen this person years ago in a place I had tried desperately to forget. A confrontation, a secret exchanged, something I thought was buried. But here they were, sitting in my son's car, calm and smiling like they owned the night. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. Why now? Why my son? My son looked at me with innocent curiosity, unaware of the tension building inside the car. He didn't notice the way the stranger's eyes followed his every move, or the way their hands rested casually on the dashboard, almost as if they had been waiting for this moment. I wanted to reach out to grab him, to pull him into my arms, but I couldn't. I was trapped in the back seat, paralyzed by fear and disbelief. The stranger leaned slightly closer to my son, their voice barely above a whisper, but I caught it perfectly. You're ready, aren't you? They said it softly, almost kindly, but there was a sharp edge underneath, a warning I couldn't ignore. My son nodded, still smiling, completely unaware of the danger that had entered his world. My stomach turned over. What was happening? What had I walked into? I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself I had to stay calm, that I had to think clearly. But every instinct screamed at me to act. My hands itched to grab something, anything, to protect my son. I considered opening the car door, stepping out, confronting the stranger, but what if that made everything worse? What if this person was dangerous? What if they had plans I couldn't even imagine? Outside, the night was quiet, but the shadows seemed to move, stretching and twisting like dark fingers across the street. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest sound of movement, footsteps. I thought, or maybe a car passing too far to be noticed. The air smelled faintly of rain and asphalt. and the faint hum of the engine made the car feel even smaller, more confining. Like a cage. Then the stranger did something that made my blood run cold. They reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to my son. My son took it looking puzzled and opened it. I could see the flash of paper, the quick movements of his hands, and my heart clenched. Whatever was inside that envelope, whatever words or instructions were there, it wasn't meant for me. It wasn't meant to be part of the world I knew. I wanted to call out. To stop this. To tell him to drop it. To run, but my voice was gone. My mouth felt like it had turned to sand. I was completely powerless, watching as this stranger introduced a new reality into my son's life. Something I had no control over. The envelope slipped from his fingers, and for a moment, it fluttered in the air like a bird trapped in a storm, before landing on the seat. My eyes followed it, wide and terrified. The stranger smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made every hair on my arms stand on end. "It's time to go," they said. My son looked at me confused, and I wanted to warn him, to tell him to stay. To not go anywhere near this person, but it was too late. The moment had already begun. I could feel the tension building like a storm inside the car. My son's eyes were wide, a mix of excitement and uncertainty, and I realized something terrifying. He trusted this person. And if he trusted them, then I was the outsider, the one who couldn't understand the secret that had just entered his life. I felt a wave of panic, of helplessness crash over me, and then just as I was about to make a move, the car's engine roared to life. My son turned the key in the ignition, and the vehicle lurched forward. The stranger leaned back, calm, almost triumphant, while I stayed hidden in the shadows of the back seat, my mind spinning. The night had shifted completely. What I had imagined as a harmless, joyful surprise had turned into something I could not control, something I didn't understand. The street lights flickered past, and the shadows danced on the dashboard like dark spirits. I could feel the envelope burning a hole in my son's hand. Like it carried more than just paper, like it carried a choice, a secret, a future I couldn't predict. And then, just as the car turned the corner, I heard my son ask a question that made my blood run cold. "Are we really ready for this?" The stranger smiled again, leaning closer, and I realized with horror that the answer would change everything. And in that instant, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. I still remember that night. The car was moving now, tires softly humming against the wet asphalt, the sound mixing with the distant echo of rain dripping from the streetlights. My heart was racing, each beat louder than the last. I stayed hidden in the back seat, frozen, watching my son and the stranger in front of me, trying to make sense of the impossible. The envelope in my son's hand seemed heavier than it should have been. It was small, plain, unassuming, but I could feel its presence radiating tension, like it carried a weight far beyond paper and ink. I wanted to reach for it, to snatch it away, to protect my son from whatever this stranger had placed into his hands, but I couldn't. The moment I tried to move, my body betrayed me, shaking uncontrollably. My son's fingers trembled slightly as he held the envelope. He looked at the stranger, a mixture of trust and confusion in his eyes. And I realized how little he knew about what was really happening. His innocence hit me like a blow. I had imagined so many things laughing together, sharing a simple surprise, but none of them prepared me for this. The stranger leaned closer, whispering something I couldn't hear, and my chest tightened. Every instinct in me screamed danger. I had known people from my past who could smile and charm their way into anyone's trust. But this person had an intensity I couldn't ignore. It was calculated, precise, and terrifying. I felt a cold sweat run down my back. I watched my son open the envelope. My stomach dropped. Inside was a single sheet of paper with words written in sharp, clear handwriting. I couldn't make out the details from where I sat, but I could see the way my son's hands shook as he read. I could hear the small, shallow intake of his breath, the quickening of his pulse. And then I saw the first flicker of fear cross his face. "What? What is this?" he asked, his voice quiet, almost a whisper, trembling slightly. The stranger's smile didn't waver. "It's your choice," they said softly. "You can stay safe or you can do what needs to be done." I felt my stomach twist into knots. What did that mean? What had I walked into? My son looked at the stranger, uncertain, but something in his expression told me that he was curious, that the words on the paper had awakened a part of him I didn't recognize. And that scared me more than anything else. I wanted to speak, to warn him, to tell him to put the envelope down and run. But my voice was gone. My throat felt dry and locked, my fear rooting me in place. All I could do was watch, trapped in the shadows of the back seat. Feeling utterly powerless, the car moved faster now, turning down a side street I didn't recognize. The stranger leaned back, calm, almost enjoying the tension they had created. I could feel the atmosphere in the car shifting. What had started as a simple plan to surprise my son had turned into something I didn't understand. It was no longer a game or a joke. It was real, and I had no idea how it would end. My son finally looked up from the paper, his eyes wide. "Do you really think I'm ready for this?" he asked, a mix of fear and determination in his voice. The stranger's lips curved into a smile, slow and knowing. "I think you've always been ready. You just didn't know it yet." A shiver ran down my spine. Their words were calm, almost soothing, but I felt their weight pressing down on the car like a storm about to break. I could sense that my son was being pulled into something far bigger than he could understand. Something I had no control over, and then the envelope slipped from my son's fingers. For a second, it floated in the air, caught between seats before falling to the floor. My heart lurched. That envelope wasn't just paper, it was a key, a warning, a message that could change everything. I had to act. I had to do something. Before I could decide what to do, the stranger suddenly turned toward me. Their eyes locked onto mine through the rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. They weren't smiling now. There was a sharp, piercing look, and it felt like they could see everything inside, me, every thought, every fear. Every secret I had tried to hide. "You can stay hidden," they said softly, almost teasingly, "or you can join us. But know this, nothing will ever be the same after tonight." My heart raced. Their words were like ice in my veins. I wanted to speak, to respond, to fight back, but I couldn't. I felt trapped, caught in a storm I couldn't control, powerless to protect my son from the danger that had entered our lives. And then, just as the car turned another corner, a sound from outside made me jump. Tires screeching, distant but growing closer. A voice shouting something I couldn't understand. My son looked startled. The stranger tensed, and in that moment, I knew the night had only just begun. Something or someone was coming for us, and I had no idea if we would make it through the night alive. I still remember that night. My heart was hammering in my chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the confined space of the car. The tires screeched over wet asphalt, a sound that seemed to echo through the empty streets like a warning. My palms were sweaty. My fingers gripped the edge of the back seat so tightly that I thought they might leave imprints in the leather. Every sense was on high alert, my eyes darting between my son and the stranger, my ears straining for any sound outside the car, and my mind spinning with fear, confusion, and disbelief. Thestranger.com and composed. Watched the road ahead as if nothing unusual were happening. But I could feel the tension in the car building with each passing second. Their presence was magnetic, dangerous, commandant. I knew my son was caught between us, too young to fully understand the storm that had just entered his life. My son's eyes flickered nervously. Toward me, the flicker of fear I had seen in them earlier, now deepening. I wanted to reach out to reassure him, but I remained hidden, trapped in my fear and disbelief. Then I heard a faint but distinct sound coming from behind us. At first I thought it was just another car, but it was too close, too deliberate. The screech of tires, the flash of headlights, and then a voice shouting something I couldn't make out clearly. My chest tightened. Someone was following us, someone who had found us. And I had no idea whether they were a friend or a threat. My son glanced at the stranger, a question in his eyes. The stranger didn't answer immediately. Instead, They leaned forward slightly, their hands tightening on the steering wheel. And I could see the faintest smile on their lips, a smile that made my skin crawl. "They've found us," the stranger said softly. "But don't worry. You're ready?" I felt a surge of panic. Ready? Ready for what? I didn't know what they were talking about. And every instinct screamed that whatever ready meant, it was dangerous, maybe even deadly. I wanted to intervene, to pull my son out of the car, but I couldn't. My body felt frozen, weighed down by fear. I was a prisoner of the night, trapped in the back seat, forced to watch as events spiraled out of control. The chase began in earnest. The car behind us accelerated, headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. I could see the reflections bouncing off the windows. The way the stranger's eyes narrowed in concentration, and my stomach churned with dread. My son's hands trembled on the dashboard, the envelope now clutched tightly in his lap. Whatever message it carried, it had the power to change everything. We turned onto a narrower street. The wet asphalt slicked beneath the tires. The sound of pursuit grew louder, the other car gaining ground. I could feel my pulse racing in sync with the car's engine, the tension in my shoulders unbearable. My son looked at me, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Dad, what's happening?" he asked, his voice trembling. I wanted to tell him the truth, to explain everything, but I couldn't. How could I explain the stranger? The envelope, the sense of danger I felt pressing down on us. How could I make him understand that the night we had imagined as a simple surprise had transformed into something much darker, much more complicated? I shook my head slightly, trying to convey reassurance. But my own fear betrayed me. The stranger spoke again, their voice calm and controlled, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Don't be afraid. You can do this. Just follow my lead." My son nodded, trusting them, and I felt a surge of helplessness that made my chest ache. How could he trust this person when I couldn't even understand them? How could I protect him when I was trapped in the back seat, powerless? Suddenly, the pursuing car flashed its headlights directly into our eyes, blinding me for a moment. The stranger swerved slightly, expertly maneuvering through the wet streets. And I realized they knew exactly what they were doing. Panic and awe mixed inside me. Couldn't believe how confident and composed they were. Even with danger chasing us, my son's voice broke through the hum of the engine. "Are we going to make it?" The stranger's eyes flicked toward him briefly. "We will. But you must stay focused. Keep your mind clear." Could see the determination forming in my son's eyes. A spark of courage I hadn't known he had. But alongside it was fear, raw and palpable, and my heart ached. I wanted to scream at him to stop trusting this stranger, to run, to escape, but I couldn't. I was a spectator, trapped in my own helplessness. The chase intensified. The streets grew narrower, shadows stretching long and dark. The sound of tires skidding echoing off the walls of the buildings. The envelope on my son's lap seemed almost alive, a symbol of the unknown path he had been thrust onto. I could see his hands shaking, gripping it tighter and tighter. And I knew that whatever message it carried, it was critical, something that could change everything. Then, out of nowhere, a sudden movement from the pursuing car made my heart leap. They were trying to force us off the road. The stranger's hands tightened on the wheel, their jaw set. My son flinched, and I felt the car lurch as the stranger swerved sharply to avoid a collision. My stomach dropped with the sudden movement, and I gripped the back seat in panic. A voice shouted from the pursuing car again, but I couldn't make out the words. The sound was muffled, distant, but the intent was clear. Someone wanted us stopped, and they were willing to do anything to make it happen. And then, as if sensing my growing panic, the stranger leaned back slightly, their eyes locking on mine through the rearview mirror. "This is only the beginning," they said, their voice calm but chilling. "Whatever you think you know, you're about to learn the truth. Are you ready for that?" Before I could respond, the pursuing car swerved dangerously close, forcing us into a narrow alley. The walls of the buildings seemed to close in on us, shadows stretching like dark fingers across the car. My pulse pounded in my ears. My son clutched the envelope tighter than ever. And I realized with a sinking heart that the night we had thought would be simple, joyful and full of laughter, had become a nightmare. And then, in that heart-stopping moment, the stranger turned to my son and whispered something I couldn't hear. My son's eyes widened, and I saw the color drain from his face. Whatever they said, whatever secret had just been revealed, it had changed everything. My stomach twisted in fear, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that nothing would ever be the same again. The car skidded sharply, and in that instant I realized the chase was far from over. The danger was far from over, and the night had only just begun. I still remember that night. Every sound, every shadow, every movement seemed sharper, more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The car skidded to a stop at the end of the alley, the tires hissing against the wet asphalt, and I could feel my chest tightening with fear. My hands were clammy, my heart hammering like a drum I couldn't control. I stayed low in the back seat, trying to keep myself hidden, but every instinct screamed that this was only the beginning. The stranger beside my son didn't panic. They leaned forward, adjusting the rearview mirror slightly. And I caught a glimpse of their eyes, calm, calculating, almost predatory. It was a look that made my blood run cold. My son sat frozen in the driver's seat, still clutching the envelope, his face pale but determined. I wanted to reach out, to grab him and pull him away from whatever this was, but my body refused to move. I was paralyzed by fear, watching as the stranger controlled the situation with an unsettling ease. "Look closely," the stranger said softly, their voice almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made me flinch. "Everything you thought you knew is about to change." I could see my son's hands trembling as he unfolded the paper from the envelope. He read the words silently, his lips moving slightly. And I could see confusion, shock, and a strange mixture of fear and curiosity on his face. Whatever was written there, it wasn't simple. It wasn't a note or a harmless instruction. It was a key, something that would unlock a truth I had never expected. I wanted to ask him what it said, to understand what had just been revealed, but the stranger's eyes flicked toward me, sharp and piercing. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their gaze, and knew immediately that they could see right through me. They knew I was watching, they knew I was afraid, and they knew I would struggle to protect my son. The sound of distant sirens broke the heavy silence of the alley. My pulse quickened. Someone had noticed the chase, or maybe the chaos we had left behind. The stranger didn't flinch. Instead, they calmly instructed my son to start the car, their hands guiding his movements with precision. My son obeyed as if he had been trained for this, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the envelope had changed. Somehow, as we drove out of the alley and back onto the main streets, the stranger finally spoke to me. "You've been keeping secrets too," they said quietly, almost conversationally. "But tonight, everything comes to light. Are you ready to face the truth?" I froze. Secrets? What did they mean? My mind raced through memories, things I had thought were long buried, forgotten, hidden from the world. Had my past just caught up with us? And why now? Why my son? Why tonight? The city streets were eerily empty. The glow of streetlights reflected off the rain-slicked asphalt. I could hear the faint hum of the car's engine, the soft rustle of tires over puddles, and the occasional distant sound of a passing vehicle. The night felt alive, almost as if it were watching us. Aware of the danger and suspense building inside the car, my son finally broke the silence. "What? What is this about?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly, but edged with curiosity. "Why now? Why me?" The stranger smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made my stomach drop. "Because it's your turn," they said softly. "The truth has been waiting, and it needs you to face it." I swallowed hard. Their words were vague, almost cryptic, but the tone carried a weight I couldn't ignore. My son's hands were still tightly gripping the envelope, and I could see the fear in his eyes, mixed with a strange determination I hadn't seen before. It was as if he understood something I didn't, and then it happened. The stranger reached over and pressed a small button hidden beneath the dashboard. The car's interior lights dimmed, and the sound system came alive with a faint, distorted message. The voice was low, mechanical, almost haunting, repeating a series of instructions I couldn't fully understand. My son's eyes widened as he listened, and I felt my stomach drop further. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than I had imagined. I wanted to shout, to intervene, to stop this. But I couldn't. I was trapped in the back seat, powerless, forced to witness the transformation of a night I had thought would be simple and joyful into a storm of secrets, fear, and mystery. The stranger leaned back, their eyes flicking between me and my son. "This is the moment that changes everything," they said quietly, almost reverently. "Once you know, nothing will ever be the same." My son's hands trembled over the envelope, and I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was no longer just my child in that moment. He was part of something far bigger. Something I didn't understand and couldn't control. I wanted to protect him, to pull him out of this, but I knew it was too late. Then, without warning, the car jolted violently to the side. A shadow passed across the windshield, fast and sudden. And I realized that the danger from earlier hadn't gone away, had only grown stronger. The pursuer, whoever it was, had found us again, and this time, they weren't holding back. My son gasped, gripping the envelope as tightly as he could, and the stranger's expression hardened. "Hold on," they said calmly, almost too calmly, and I knew that whatever was coming next, it would change everything. And in that moment, as the tires skidded across wet asphalt and shadows danced like ghosts in the headlights, I realized with chilling clarity the night was far from over. The secrets were far from fully revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. I still remember that night. The car was speeding through the darkened streets, rain slicking the asphalt and making every turn feel like a gamble. My chest felt tight, my stomach churned, and my hands were clammy, gripping the edge of the back seat so hard I could feel my knuckles whiten. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, and yet my mind raced faster than the car itself. The stranger beside my son remained unnervingly calm, their eyes fixed on the road ahead, while my son's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, still clutching the envelope that had turned our night upside down. The sound of our pursuer was closer now, the tires on wet pavement echoing like a drumbeat in the night. My pulse raced in sync with the car's engine, and every instinct screamed that we were running out of time. I wanted to scream, to leap into the front seat, to warn my son, to protect him, but I couldn't. I was trapped in the back seat, a helpless witness to events far beyond my control. The stranger leaned closer to my son, their voice low and calm, cutting through the tension like a knife. "This is the moment, the choice that defines everything," they said softly. "Whatever you do, it must be precise, calculated, and fearless." My son swallowed hard, his lips trembling. I don't know if I can do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. The stranger's eyes softened just for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. "You can. You already are." I could feel a cold weight pressing into my chest as I watched them. Whatever the stranger was talking about, whatever plan they had for my son, it was serious. Deadly serious. And I realized with horror that this wasn't just a simple encounter, a harmless surprise, or a game. My son was being drawn into something far bigger than I could imagine, something I had no control over. The city streets blurred past as the car weaved through alleys and side roads. Shadows stretched and twisted across the dashboard, flickering in the glow of the streetlights. I could hear the faint patter of rain on the roof, the distant hum of traffic, and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Every nerve in my body screamed danger. Yet the stranger remained calm, almost in control of the chaos that surrounded us. Then, without warning, the envelope slipped from my son's lap again. It fluttered like a bird trapped in a storm before landing near the floor mat. My heart lurched. That envelope wasn't just paper, it was a key, a secret, a weapon, a message. And I knew that the moment it touched the wrong hands, everything could be lost. "Pick it up," the stranger instructed. Their voice was gentle but firm. My son's hands reached down and grabbed the envelope, his fingers trembling as he held it close. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A faint symbol printed in the corner, one I had seen long ago. Associated with a secret organization I thought had disappeared years ago. I gasped silently, my mind racing. How is this possible? Why was it here now in my son's hands? And what did it mean? The stranger glanced at me briefly through the rearview mirror. Their gaze was sharp, piercing, as if reading every thought in my mind. "You've kept your secrets too," they said softly. "But tonight, everything will come out. You need to watch, and you need to understand." I felt a chill run down my spine. Secrets? Everything. What could they mean? The stranger's calm confidence was terrifying, and I realized that the night I had planned as a simple surprise had turned into a confrontation with forces I didn't understand. Forces that had been waiting for this very moment, and my son was at the center of it all. Suddenly, headlights appeared in the distance behind us. The pursuing car had found us again, and this time it wasn't subtle. They were gaining fast, their approach aggressive, almost violent. My pulse raced even faster, and I could feel my son's hands tightening on the envelope as if it were a lifeline. The stranger leaned forward slightly, speaking quietly but urgently. "Prepare yourself. You're about to see why you were chosen." My stomach twisted. Chosen, my son. For what? What could possibly make this stranger so certain that he belonged in the center of whatever storm was approaching? Fear and adrenaline surged through me, almost paralyzing me, but I forced myself to focus. I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The pursuer's car suddenly swerved, trying to ram us from behind. The stranger reacted instantly, maneuvering the car with precision that left me both terrified and amazed. My son flinched but kept control, and I realized that despite his fear, he was beginning to understand, beginning to trust the stranger's instructions. And then it happened a sudden, deafening crash echoed from the alley ahead. A barrier had been placed, blocking our path. The pursuer had anticipated us, had set a trap. My chest tightened, panic surging through me. I wanted to leap out of the car to protect my son, to do something, anything, but I was powerless. The stranger leaned back, calm as ever, their eyes fixed on me through the rearview mirror. "This is your test," they said softly. "Stay focused. Watch, learn, and remember. The truth is far larger than you can imagine." My son's eyes met mine briefly, wide and frightened. I could see the fear in him, but also a spark of courage I hadn't expected. Whatever lay ahead, he was stepping into it, willingly, or at least he felt he had no choice. The car screeched as the stranger made a sudden turn down a narrow, dark alley, tires skidding over wet asphalt. The pursuing car followed close behind, relentless. The walls of the buildings pressed in, shadows stretching like hands ready to grab us. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty, the night was far from over. The danger was far from over, and whatever the stranger intended, it was about to be revealed. And just as we rounded the corner, headlights flashing in our mirrors, my son whispered almost to himself, "Dad, I think I understand now." I looked at him, panic and fear coiling tight in my chest, but before I could ask him what he meant, a deafening crash came from behind, and everything went black. I still remember that night. The world seemed to tilt and spin as the deafening crash echoed in my ears. Glass shattered, metal groaned, and the smell of burnt rubber and wet asphalt filled the car. My heart was hammering so violently I thought it might tear right out of my chest. I pressed myself into the back seat, my hands gripping the edge so tightly it hurt, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Every sense was screaming danger. Every instinct was telling me that our lives had just changed forever. The car skidded to a stop against the wall of the alley, tires squealing as if protesting against the sudden halt. My son was shaking, clutching the envelope to his chest, eyes wide with fear and confusion. The stranger beside him, calm as ever, didn't flinch. Their hand moved with precise control, adjusting the rearview mirror as if they had expected this moment. I felt a shiver run down my spine. How could anyone remain so composed in the middle of chaos? I told you, the stranger said quietly, almost conversationally. This night would change everything. My son's hands trembled over the envelope. What? What does it mean? He asked, his voice barely audible, thick with urgency and fear. The stranger smiled faintly, a chilling calmness in their expression. It means that the life you thought you knew is over, and the one you are stepping into is far bigger than you imagined. I felt my stomach twist with dread. Stepping into what? My mind raced, piecing together fragments of memory, the envelope. The mysterious symbols, the calm, commanding presence of the stranger. And then it hit me. Whatever secret this person held, it involved my son. Something crucial, something dangerous. Something that could change everything I had ever known. I wanted to speak. To warn him, to scream that he shouldn't trust this stranger. That he had to run, but my voice failed me. My throat was dry, my body frozen with fear. I could only watch as the stranger reached over and gently touched the envelope. My son flinched, but didn't resist. You have to understand, the stranger said softly. Their eyes never leaving my son's, that this choice isn't about what you want. It's about what needs to be done. And you are the only one who can do it. I felt my heart constrict. My son, the only one who could do it. I didn't understand. I couldn't. I wanted to intervene, to protect him from whatever task had been thrust upon him, but I was powerless, trapped in the back seat as a silent witness to this unfolding nightmare. Then, the stranger leaned closer to me, their eyes locking onto mine through the rearview mirror. You need to accept that this night is bigger than both of you, they said quietly, and the truth will not wait. I swallowed hard. The weight of their words pressed down on me almost physically. I felt a crushing helplessness, a despair that made my chest ache. The night I had imagined as a simple surprise, a moment of joy with my son, had turned into a whirlwind of fear, secrets, and danger. And now I realized it had become a turning point, one that I couldn't control, couldn't predict, and couldn't escape. The sound of distant engines pulled my attention back to the streets outside. The pursuing car had found us again, its headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. The stranger didn't panic. They shifted slightly, their hands steady on the wheel, eyes scanning the road with calculated precision. Stay calm, they said softly, almost kindly, but there was an edge to their voice that made my stomach twist. We're almost there. I glanced at my son. His hand still gripped the envelope tightly, his face pale but determined. There was fear, yes, but also something else, a spark of courage, a sense of responsibility I hadn't seen in him before. And in that moment, I realized the truth the stranger had been hinting at. My son was no longer just a child. And tonight, he was stepping into a role I could barely comprehend. We turned another corner, and the cityscape fell away into darkness. Shadows stretched across the road, the rain-slicked pavement reflecting the dim glow of distant streetlights. I could feel the tension in the car thickening, almost suffocating, as if the very night was alive, aware of the danger and anticipation building inside. Then, without warning, the stranger pressed a small button beneath the dashboard. A low hum filled the car, and a holographic projection flickered to life above the dashboard. Words, symbols, and diagrams appeared in a pale blue light. My son's eyes widened as he read them, and I could see his hands trembling more violently than before. The envelope, I realized, had been a Keon introduction, a warning, a guide. This is it, the stranger said quietly. The path you must take. Everything you've been told, everything you've been hidden from. It all comes together here. My mind spun. I could see parts of the puzzle, forming the symbols, the messages, the precise, terrifying calm of the stranger. I wanted to intervene, to shield my son, to pull him away from whatever destiny was unfolding before him. But I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped, a spectator as events spiraled further out of control. And then, just as I was beginning to comprehend the gravity of the situation, my son whispered almost breathlessly, I think I know what I have to do. The stranger nodded, a faint smile crossing their lips. Good, it begins now. Before I could respond, the sound of shattering glass and a roar of engines filled the alley. Another vehicle, larger, faster, and more aggressive than the first, slammed into the side of the car, throwing it violently to the left. My chest hit the seat, and I felt the breath knocked out of me. My son screamed, gripping the envelope as if it were the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. The stranger's calm demeanor never wavered. "Hold on," they said. "Everything is about to change." And in that heart-stopping moment, as the rain poured down in torrents and shadows danced like dark spirits around the car, I realized with absolute certainty the night I had thought would be simple, joyful and full of laughter, had become a test, a mission, and a revelation. The danger was no longer outside. It was inside. And the truth, the full truth, was finally coming to light. I still remember that night. The car was spinning, tires screeching on wet asphalt as rain poured down in heavy sheets, each drop hitting the roof like a hammer. My chest felt like it was being crushed, my stomach twisting with fear. And my hands gripped the edge of the back seat until my knuckles were white. My mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened, but there was no time. Danger was all around us. And the stranger beside my son remained unnervingly calm. The envelope lay on my son's lap, trembling slightly in his hands. I could see the fear in his eyes, but also determination, something I had never seen before. He was no longer just my son. He was someone thrust into a reality I didn't understand, facing a challenge I couldn't protect him from. I wanted to reach out to tell him it was going to be okay, but my voice was gone. My body refused to move. I was trapped in the back seat, a helpless spectator as events spiraled further out of control. The stranger leaned over slightly, their calm gaze locking onto my son's. "It's time," they said softly. "Everything you've been told, everything you've learned tonight, it all comes together now. You must choose. Are you ready?" My son swallowed hard, eyes wide, the envelope trembling in his grasp. I think I am," he whispered. But his voice was barely audible over the roar of the rain in the engine. Suddenly, the pursuing vehicle surged ahead, trying to ram us off the road. The stranger reacted instantly, maneuvering the car with a precision that left me both terrified and amazed. My son flinched, gripping the envelope tighter. I realized that he was beginning to understand, beginning to trust the stranger's instructions. My heart ached and twisted with helplessness, and Firai wanted to protect him, to shield him from whatever lay ahead, but I couldn't. The streets around us were nearly empty, shadows stretching long and dark under the dim glow of streetlights. Every corner, every alley seemed to hold new danger, every sound amplified by the pounding of my own heartbeat. I could hear the wind howling through the trees, the distant hum of a city that seemed oblivious to the chaos unfolding in its streets, and the low, threatening roar of the engine from the car behind us. Then the stranger leaned closer to my son, whispering something I couldn't hear. My son's eyes widened, and I saw a flicker of understanding and fear cross his face. He nodded once, slowly, as if committing himself to something I couldn't yet grasp. My stomach turned over. Whatever secret had just been revealed. It had changed everything. The envelope slipped slightly in my son's hands, and the stranger reached out to stabilize it. I watched, tense and silent, as they gently placed a hand over his, guiding him. "You have the key," they said softly. "The choice is yours. But know this, once you act, nothing can be undone." My mind spun. The key, choice. I had no idea what they meant. My son was trembling, clutching the envelope as if it were a lifeline. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, and my heart ached with fear. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to throw the envelope away, to escape, but I couldn't. I was powerless then. The stranger turned to me briefly, their gaze piercing. "You need to understand," they said, almost gently, "that this night is bigger than both of you. The truth will be revealed whether you're ready or not." My pulse quickened. Truth? What truth? I had no idea what they were talking about, but I knew it was serious, terrifyingly serious. My son's hands shook as he opened the envelope fully, and I could finally see what was inside. A series of coordinates, a date, and a short message written in a handwriting I recognized instantly my own. I froze. My handwriting. How? Why? I felt my throat tighten and my mind raced. This wasn't just a message. This was a call, a warning, something I had left behind years ago, something I had tried to forget. And now it was in my son's hands. The stranger leaned forward, their eyes gleaming. You see, the past and the future are converging tonight. Your son must act, and you must watch. My heart was in my throat. Watch. I wanted to intervene, to grab the envelope to protect him, but I couldn't. I was frozen, helpless, as my son read the message aloud. The words were simple but chilling, a directive that made my stomach turn. You are the one. Only you can finish what we started. The rest depends on your choice. My son's hands trembled violently as he finished reading. His eyes darted to the stranger, then to me, searching for guidance, for reassurance. I had none to give. I could only watch, terrified and powerless. As he realized the enormity of what he had been handed, the pursuing car slammed into the side of the alley with a deafening crash, throwing our vehicle violently. Glass shattered, metal twisted, and I felt myself pressed into the back seat as the car spun slightly. My son screamed, gripping the envelope like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to reality. The stranger's calm hands moved with precision, steadying the wheel, controlling the chaos with a skill I could never have imagined. And then, as the car skidded to a stop, the stranger leaned back, eyes locking onto mine one last time. This is it, they said. The final moment before the truth is revealed. Are you ready to see everything? I wanted to scream, to beg, to protect my son from the reality that was about to hit us, but before I could, the shadows outside the car shifted violently, and a figure emerged from the darkness, blocking our path entirely. The rain poured harder, the night thick with tension and danger, and I realized with absolute certainty that the next few moments would determine everything. My son's lips trembled as he whispered, almost breathlessly, I have to do this. The stranger nodded, calm and collected, and in that instant, I knew. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same again. I still remember that night. The rain had turned the streets into rivers of silver, reflecting the dim glow of streetlights like shards of broken glass. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat echoing like a drum of warning. I was pressed into the back seat, powerless, yet every nerve in my body screamed that what was about to happen would change everything forever. My son sat in the driver's seat, hands trembling but gripping the envelope tightly. The stranger beside him remained calm, eyes unwavering, exuding a confidence that both terrified and amazed me. The figure that had blocked our path in the alley now loomed larger, dark and menacing, rain dripping off its coat. I could feel my stomach twist with fear, but my son didn't flinch. He looked at the stranger, and I saw the spark of understanding and courage in his eyes. Whatever instructions he had been given, whatever secret had been revealed to him, he was ready, or at least he thought he was. The stranger leaned slightly toward my son, their voice low, precise, and firm. This is the moment you were chosen for. Once you act, nothing will be the same. You understand? My son nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I understand, he whispered, and my chest tightened. I wanted to speak, to tell him to stop, to run, to protect him, but I couldn't. I was frozen, a helpless witness to his bravery, to the terrifying responsibility thrust upon him. The pursuer raised their hand, revealing a device I hadn't seen before, glowing panel with flashing lights, humming with power. It was clear they intended to take the envelope, to seize whatever secret it carried. My son's hands clenched around it, and I felt a mix of fear and awe. He wasn't just holding paper, he was holding destiny. Now, the stranger said calmly, "You know what to do." Time seemed to slow. My son's eyes darted to mine for a brief moment, and I could see the conflict in him: fear, hesitation, and the heavy weight of responsibility. Then he took a deep breath, exhaled, and moved with surprising precision. With one swift motion, he opened the envelope fully, exposing a small device hidden inside. His hands worked quickly, almost instinctively, placing it onto the dashboard. The device hummed, glowing brighter, filling the car with a pale blue light that reflected off the rain-slicked windows. I could feel the tension in the air, almost physical, as if the night itself held its breath. The stranger's eyes sparkled, a mix of pride and satisfaction. "Good," they whispered. "You've done it. The rest is beyond your control now." The pursuing figure froze, taken aback, their device malfunctioning as the blue light enveloped everything. I could feel the energy in the car vibrating in my chest, resonating with some unseen force. My son's eyes widened, but there was no fear, only determination and clarity. He had made the choice. He had stepped into the responsibility he didn't ask for, the destiny he hadn't sought, but he was ready. The stranger leaned back, their calm demeanor unchanged, and spoke softly to me. "You see now? The truth was always bigger than you imagined. And your son, he was meant to carry it forward." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as my son, trembling but resolute, activated the device fully. The glow expanded, illuminating the alley, the surrounding buildings, even the figure that had tried to block us. The pursuing car's engine died, the lights flickered. And then everything went quiet. Silence, absolute. Heavy, almost sacred. My son turned to me, eyes shining in the pale blue light. "It's done," he said softly. "It's over, for now." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Relief, pride, fear, and all at once. He had faced the unknown, stepped into a world of secrets and danger, and emerged alive, victorious, and changed. He was no longer just my child. He was someone who had carried the weight of truth with courage I could never have imagined. The strangers stood, their purpose fulfilled, and looked at us both one last time. "Remember," they said quietly, almost reverently, "the night has ended, but the journey continues. Protect what you have learned and never forget the choice that changed everything." Then, without another word, they vanished into the shadows, leaving the alley silent except for the soft patter of rain. I exhaled slowly, relief flooding through me, and reached for my son. He looked at me, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We made it," he whispered, and I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of the night lift just slightly from my shoulders, as we drove home. The rain still falling softly, I realized that the night had changed us forever. It had tested our courage, our trust, and our bond. My son had stepped into a world I hadn't fully understood, and I had witnessed his strength, his bravery, and his heart. And though the night had been filled with fear, danger, and uncertainty, it had also revealed the truth that together we could face anything. I still remember that night, and I know I never will forget it. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every night holds a secret, and every choice can change everything. Thank you for being with me on this journey.